Hi, I'm going to show you a demonstration level using the advanced site component. This blueprint will be available, posted in the marketplace, and this is the tutorial that goes along with that project. So we have a very simple level. There's an AI here. There's a player start here, and then there's these two cylinders are control points that the AI is going to walk back and forth in. I've created a very simple AI that is going to essentially start at point one, wait a certain amount of time, and then walk to point two, wait another same amount of time, and then walk back to point one. So it just kind of walks back and forth. Right now that's set to 50 seconds, and obviously you can set it to whatever you want. So the relevant components for this are first the third person character. The third person character, I've used the standard blueprint. Nothing really special here, but I've created a couple of HUD interface. So there's this threat meter, progress bar, and a text widget that I've added. And in the begin play, I'm creating the HUD, adding it to the viewport, and then grabbing those two controls and setting the variables. May not be the most elegant way, but simple for the purpose of the demonstration. In the HUD, again, this is pretty simple. I've got the threat meter, which I've set as a variable, so it's exposed, and then the text, which will just use the threat meter text and also set that as a variable. So that's the HUD, very simple. The real logic happens here in this seeker class. So there's a couple of things going on here. I've added the advanced site component, and I've set the variables here to do at least one event every 300 milliseconds. So if I get one site event in a third of a second, then I'm going to report it. At least one site event in the third of a second. You can make this smaller if you want it more accurate, but for the purpose of demonstration and performance, that's probably a reasonable start. I've also limited it to only this actor to search for. So just my guy who's going to be running around. So each time that I get an event, I'm going to add the event into, call it an array or a queue, but basically it's going to capture the time of the event, the number of events that happened, and the distance that the event was that my actor was from the AI. This struct I've created as a user struct here, so it's just got timestamp, count, and distance, which are those three variables. Right? So basically all this is doing is just gathering up the events each time that there's an event that happens. Then the real calculation happens up here. So on each tick, first I'm going to expire old events. And so we use a reverse for loop to iterate through the array because you don't want to delete events out of order. So using a reverse for loop will let you do that. So this basically looks at the timestamp of each event in the array, compares it to the current time. If it's more than 3,000 milliseconds old, it's going to remove it. So that's essentially what this is doing, just cleaning up all the old events. So I only look at events for the last 3 seconds. Obviously, you can tune this to whatever's relevant for you. Then we've got this threat value where we're going to accumulate the different events. So there was a suggestion on the forum to look at incorporating distance into that, and so that's what this is going to do, as well as the number of events. You could also do recency, so the time, you could have time decay of the events. But anyway, it looks at each of the site events that's in the array that's left after we've already deleted the old ones, takes the distance that we calculated at the time that that event happened. I'm making it a linear distance, so I used 10,000 as a cap. You could really use whatever you want, depending on what your game performance is and what the characteristics of your AI is. And this could also be a logarithmic function if you wanted to do that instead. I then took the number of events and multiplied it by the distance, and then divided it by 1,000 to normalize it. Remember that the progress bar has a value of 0 to 1. So this then sets the threat value by just accumulating all those values up. So I'm updating the threat value with the sum of all of these different things. When the for loop is done, I go over and grab my two HUD elements. So the threat meter, which I called the percentage, and the text, which I called the text threat meter, and I push the threat value into that. So that's really it in a nutshell. I will quickly demonstrate this for you. So you can see he's getting hit. We'll let it cool off for a minute. So the farther away I am, the slower the threat meter will go up. And you can see I could probably scale this a little more. And then if I get much closer, the threat meter goes up much faster. So now this guy doesn't look around a lot, so it's a little bit harder to visualize what's happening. But basically that's it in a nutshell. So the farther away I am, and the longer I stand in it, the higher the threat meter goes up. Obviously, there's a lot of tunables that you could have here, but that's the general gist of how this works.